All right, Sainz versus Albon. Who's going to win? What is the data set? Right now, as you can see in the standings, Albon is doing way better at Sainz. He currently has 10 points. Sainz is all the way down here at 0. But is that going to last? Now, the big question with Sainz is, was this just a one-off aberration, or was this a trend that he's lost his juice? The good news with Sainz is that he's changed teams a lot of times before. He's changed teams to Renault, McLaren, and Ferrari. And if you look at his cumulative average points per race over those seasons, you see that in each and every single one, he improves dramatically, which makes sense. You know, he goes to a new car, he doesn't really understand it well, and then he improves. So if you look at Renault, you know, he started out with 1 point per race, and then he gradually improved. He got all the way up to a little bit over 2. If you look at McLaren, his first 3 races, he got 0 points, but then he ended up with about 4.3 points. And then if you look at Ferrari, he started with 4, and then he ended up around, what is that, 7.3? So you see Carlos Sainz clearly makes dramatic improvements every single year as he gets more used to the car. Another factor you have to include is the rain factor, right? This Australia Grand Prix, not only was it his first Grand Prix in a new car, but it was also his first Grand Prix in a new car in wet conditions. And if you see as well, I mean, this point difference doesn't look that big. It's about 0.5 points, but that's kind of a pretty big points difference between dry and wet in his first Ferrari season, showing that when you're in a new car on in wet conditions, it's even harder. Now, if you see this in terms of the cumulative average, it's even larger, right? So he gets all the way down to about 4 points per race by the second wet race in 2011, but then he ends up around 6 points per race, 50% better. So I think this is pretty clear, just a one-time aberration. So let's look at Carlos Sainz's general effect on teams. This is one of the craziest stats, I think, in sports, that every single team Carlos Sainz goes to increases dramatically. So Renault, you see this about 50% jump. You see about a 3x jump when he joined McLaren. And then Ferrari, he had about a 2x jump. And remember, at Ferrari, he was replacing Sebastian Vettel, right? A 4-time champion. When Carlos Sainz got there, the team improved dramatically. Now, Williams is a little bit lower than McLaren and Renault were in the years before Carlos Sainz joined, but I think they're going to see a similar jump as Renault and McLaren, especially because, unlike Renault and McLaren, they also have a huge technical upgrade to the car. It wasn't just, a few minor changes when Carlos Sainz came in. So I think that you're going to see Williams in that 150 to 200 point range, but we're going to talk about that in a second. But all this to say, I think that you're going to see a huge jump in performance. Now let's talk about the Alex Albon of this. Was this 10 points in this race a marker of things to come? Is he going to average about 10 points per race, or is this more of an aberration? I think it was a little bit more of an aberration, but not that much. If you look at Alex Albon's position frequency in 2024, this is DNF over here, you see that, it's kind of what you would expect. You see kind of like a, bimodal, a little bit of a lump graph over here where he typically does really well in 1 or 2 races, but then most of the time he's in around the 11 to 16 range. I don't think he's going to end up in this range as frequently, but I think that what you're going to see is you're going to see about 2, 3, maybe 4 races in the year where he does incredibly well, and then everything else where he ends up in a different range. Now, because I think because Williams is going to make this huge jump, I think that range is not going to be the 11 to 15 range. I think it's going to be around in the 8 to 12 range in terms of positions, not in terms of points. But this, 10 points, I think is definitely going to be at this edge, and I think that he's going to be averaging around 4 points per race. And this becomes even more stark when you look at it from a cumulative point of view over the course of the season, right? You see over here 15th, but then he did a drastic improvement. Again, because this is average position, going down is good, going up is bad. If you see over here, he goes down, he has a couple of good races, but then he ends up, regressing to the mean. So Alex Albon is a really good start of the season guy, but then he kind of regresses to the mean. I think that we're going to see that for the rest of the season. Now, one final graph, and I think you're probably thinking, why didn't you just lead with this? Because I thought all the other information was interesting as well. But this is a breakdown of Carlos Sainz versus his teammate in each of the teams that he went to, right? So Renault, and this was when Sainz, this was back in 2018, right? So this is 7 years ago when Sainz was still a rookie. Well, not a rookie, but a newbie. Like in Renault, he got beat by his teammate. But if you look at McLaren, he scored almost twice as many points as Lando Norris. Granted, that's because Lando Norris, was a rookie that season, and Carlos Sainz was a little bit more experienced, but still, he brought in the majority of those points. And even when he was at Ferrari, Carlos Sainz brought in more points his first year than Charles Leclerc. It was a tiny margin, but it speaks to the fact that even though Charles Leclerc had been in that car for a lot longer than Sainz, Sainz was able to master it and become the better driver. So I think that, especially based off of the Ferrari, we're going to see Carlos Sainz overtake Albon probably around race 6 or 7 of this year. Where does that leave us for the season? So this is kind of my prediction at this point. I think that we're going to see about an average points per race from Sainz at around 5. And I think that Albon's going to be around 3.8, which is going to lead us with Sainz of total points this season around 120, Albon around 91, with Williams at 211. So where does that leave them in the standing? If you look over the course of 2021 to 2024, the labeling got screwed up on this graph, but this is what the standings look like in each of those years. You look at 8th place, their average points was 113, and in 9th place, the average points was 84. In 2021, which was kind of the most evenly spread out year, 8th place got 115 and 9th got 110, and I think that's where Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz are going to end up. I think Sainz is going to end up at 8th place, Albon's going to end up at 9th place, which I think is incredibly respectable for where we saw Williams the past couple of years. And finally, where does Williams ends up with? This is the cumulative graph. The last one is the averages. I should have said that for the last one, of 2021 to 2024. 3rd place, the average points was 446. 4th place was 275. But in 2021, if you look over here, 2021 3rd place got 275 points, and 4th place got 115 points, 3rd and 4th. I think that's where Williams is going to end up with. I think Williams is going to end up in around 4th place with 211 points. I think Sainz is going to end up in 8th place, and Albon is going to end up in 9th place. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, and then also start following.